Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, and incidents in pop culture to see how those incidents may affect our daily lives. Listen, this is another episode of a celebrity legal issues. Child, we're going to go over that press conference that Jay-Z's attorney, Alex Spiro had with the press. We're going to go over and review that hearing. And we're gonna have a little questions and see what's going on. All right. Let me get. Hey. Here we go. Child, it's a bit much. A little housekeeping, y'all. Please comment, like this video. Please, if you like what you see, please subscribe. Once you subscribe, you'll be open to a plethora of television series and movies that I have reviewed, and also these pop culture crack celebrity legal news. Hold on just one moment. All right. So let me bring this to the stage. All right. Give me one moment and we are going to go over it and see what's going on. It says the attorney for Jay-Z holds a press briefing on recent allegations.
When you're trying to evaluate whether something occurred, you have to look at different pieces of the narrative. The location, where it happened, the witnesses, who were they, what did they say, the details. Details are very important in time. So we start off with the location. And according to their complaint, after approximately 20 minutes, she arrived at a White House with a U-shaped driveway and a gate. There is no such location in New York, 20 minutes from Radio City. It does not exist. There is no such location. We don't know whether they created a location in order to try to get jurisdiction in New York so they could bring this case in New York, or that they just didn't do their homework. But any New Yorker knows there is no such location. Beyond that, this was supposed to have taken place at Mr. Combs' after party, according to them. When you look at the homes associated with Mr. Combs during that period of time, and even not during that period of time, none of them matches. He had a townhouse, he had a house in the Hamptons hours away, and he had homes in New Jersey, but not at that time. None of the homes work, the location doesn't work because this never happened. And again, when you really bear down on the location and his whereabouts, you quickly realize, because of there's photographic evidence and witnesses are coming forward, that Mr. Carter was at a commercial establishment.
I'm going to stop it right there. So he made some interesting points. And this is one of the things, again, this is not a thing where we're besmirching a victim. We are trying to vet what's going on with that victim, and there is just some things that are not making sense. If we go back, one of the things that this is important. Hold up, y'all. Let's go back. The one thing that's important in that from the 20-minute ride from Radio City Music Hall, number one, that there was no home described as she had described it. Now, there were folks on Twitter who were pulling up this same information that there was no homes around that time. They were even pulling up places where someone mentioned that there was like a street that had beautiful homes on it, but it didn't have the U-shaped driveway. It didn't have that particular driveway. So they could not find that home. Hold on. So they couldn't find that particular home. So let's continue. We're going to start back from where he mentioned this and keep going.
When you look at the homes associated with Mr. Combs during that period of time, and even not during that period of time, none of them matches. He had a townhouse.
So let's look at that. He has a Manhattan townhouse, and it looks like it's let's see, he had a Manhattan townhouse not a large residence. It wasn't gated. There was no U-shaped driveway, no gas station within a mile. Again, they are pulling the information from the lawsuit that was filed. He has a Hamptons home. It's a 2-hour drive, not gated, no U-shaped, and no gas station within 5 miles. Then it says here he had a New Jersey home, not in New York, not gated, not U-shaped, and no gas station within 2 miles. And he sold this home in 1998. Then he had another one in New Jersey. It's not in New York, not white, no gas station with 2 miles. And he purchased in 2004, which would have been after this incident would have taken place, according to the lawsuit filed by Tony Busby's law firm. So let's continue.
He had a house in the Hamptons hours away, and he had homes in New Jersey, but not at that time. None of the homes work. The location doesn't work because this never happened. And again, when you really bear down on the location and his whereabouts, you quickly realize, because of there's photographic evidence and witnesses are coming forward, that Mr. Carter was at a commercial establishment after the VMAs. He wasn't at a house. Unfortunately for them, they needed to create this house in order to create the narrative. But he wasn't at a White House that did not exist. And this is a photograph of him at a location after the VMAs.
And that's interesting. Look at that. They have approximate times. They got 8 p.m. to 11:11. He was at the event, the music video, the MTV Video Music Awards. They have a picture of showing him at the MTV Music Awards. That's evidence. Then from 11 p.m. onward, he after party at the driver stated that he had to drive Combs and the other to the after party first, but instructed plaintiff to return to his location after the event, and he picked her up and took her to the party. So let's continue. This is the information that they have on the screen right here. I'm just trying to keep up with it.
So as we can continue through this, that Jane Doe does not say that the assault happened at a commercial establishment. She can't. That wouldn't make any sense. Yet they stand by it. They double down. They triple down. White House, White House. The White House doesn't exist. And then we get to the witnesses. And I think at the outset, everybody has to remember that in 24 years, not a single witness has ever come forward saying this happened. Quarter of a century. Think about that. She says she's at the party alone, this 13-year-old girl, and she finds herself in the room with the 3 most famous people at the party. Just think about how unnatural, how little common sense that makes. And according to her, one of the witnesses is a female celebrity who's just standing there watching the repetitive rape of a child. That celebrity does nothing, says nothing, reports nothing. And in fact, they won't even identify her. According to them, there's an adult female in the room watching the rape of a child. They refuse to identify her. So then we continue. And you look, and there's celebrities that she says she's mingling with before. Afterwards, she says she runs out of the house naked. Runs out of the house naked. None of them notice that. None of them pay any notice. For 24 years, none of them has said anything. And so she's just asked in this interview, she's asked, well, I mean, celebrities are recognizable people. Surely you can tell us one celebrity that was there. Just give us one name so that we know this happened. And she says, okay, Benji Madden was there. And she wants to conjure up religion and say, I'm religious. I remember his tattoo. She looks and remembers so vividly the tattoo and the conversation with Mr. Madden. Well, Mr. Madden wasn't there. He already said he wasn't there. His tour schedule said he wasn't there.
Oh, they have his tour schedule up.
And he wasn't there because this never happened. None of this ever happened. And you keep going and you ask yourself, well, who is this complaining witness? She does not come forward with her real name. She proceeds under Jane Doe. There's no report to the police. According to her, she never tells anybody for 24 years. Not one person, not alone in the car for 5 hours at home, on her way home. Not one person, not a diary, not a family member, not a friend. Most people, when this happens, there's a need to tell somebody.
And they're asking for reporting to a friend, talking to your therapist, talking to the police, talking to anybody, they are looking for a record that you made mention about something during this whole period of time, because this would have caused you a lot of stress, and somebody may not speak of it again. I understand that, but they're looking at the fact that she came back after 25 years to pull this statement up, and there's nothing. And specifically, they talked about a diary entry. Again, not talking to any of her friends, or not even talking about the fact that she went to New York. Now, she had a friend that drove her there 5.5 hours, but they're doubling down on that there was no corroborating person to or no corroborating witness to verify what she said. Let's continue.
All these prompt outcry witnesses. In most complaints like this, people tell somebody. She says nobody for 24, 25 years. And then we get to the details. And I want to make sure this is clear. When people make up an account, whether intentionally or their mind is playing tricks on them, they can always get that core part of the story right. They can just keep repeating it over and over and over again. This is what happened, that core part. But they're always going to mess up the details. When something isn't real, when something doesn't happen, you're going to get the details wrong because you weren't really there. And so she starts with her story about her friend that dropped her off. Okay? This drive of over 5 hours, the friend would have had to have gone 10 plus hours to drop her off, because she's got to get there. If this is real, she's got to get there. But guess what? This friend of hers, she doesn't get out of the car. Right? Think about that. She's just leaving a 13-year-old girl alone in Midtown. She doesn't even want to get out of the car. She came all that way. There can't be a witness there. She can't have a witness there because this never happened. So as you keep going, you ask yourself, but how did she end up in the car in the first place? And so she creates this story. She says, I snuck out the window, right? But now we know she came from Rochester. So she would have been sneaking out of the window at 3 p.m. in the middle of broad daylight. Never heard of such a thing, defies common sense, doesn't make any sense because this never happened. And so she tells this story because she's got to create a way that she gets out of the house and ends up in New York City. And as we keep going here, the friend that implausibly leaves her there, there's then some pressure on that part of the story because it doesn't make any sense. And so the lawyer is asked, well, just produce the friend. And so he has to find somebody that can make this work. And of course, as soon as he's pressed, they find somebody who they say is no longer alive. They can't corroborate it, and there's nobody to talk to. Okay, and if we can keep going. Next slide. So she then gets there, right? And she has this vivid tale of watching it on a Jumbotron. It's in her complaint. Clear as day. There was no Jumbotron that year.
Wait a minute, what? But the broadcast of the VMA conclusively shows that there was no Jumbotron. And I'm reading from what he has on his PowerPoint presentation, because you know we here at PAM Entertainment TV, we love a good PowerPoint presentation, child. But indeed, the producer of the 2000 VMAs and the NYPD confirmed that there was no Jumbotron since their permit application was denied. It's not looking good. But we're going to continue, y'all. We're going to continue. Because it's sad, because if she's had something that happened to her, she has it's just sad. It's bad that someone who has been accused of something is one thing, and then them having to go through that, and then to be the person who has gone through some stuff. This is a lot, and this, because I want to be gentle, but yet I want to get my point across, in that when people, there is no such thing as a perfect witness. I do want to put that there, because there will be things that you won't remember, or there'll be some things that may not jump up. We all understand that. But There's just so many things at this point that are not lining up, that's not making sense. Because initially I thought that this person was from New York City, Manhattan, New York City, and her friend dropped her off, and she was, she snuck out of her home. But I mean, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is if her parents were in the front room and she didn't want them to know that she was leaving and she snuck out the window. So that doesn't seem odd to me, because I have known people to sneak out of the window in broad daylight because they don't want to go past their parents in the front room, because that's the only way to get to the front door. So they have snuck out of the bedroom. But we'll continue, because this is his presentation and he is providing his investigatorial evidence that his law firm did to debunk what's going on. And again, this is coming across, and he's doing this publicly because I believe because Tony Busby did theirs publicly, he's doing his publicly to counteract the mess in the press from what Busby has said about Jay-Z and all of this other stuff. So, one moment. So he's doing that to counteract. Yeah, he's doing that to counteract all of this, what Tony Busby has put in the press for the past, week and a half, 2 weeks. So let's continue.
Okay. I don't know whether they were Googling images and found the wrong year. I don't know whether she's just making it up out of whole cloth. There is no Jumbotron. In fact, they didn't even get a permit, according to the police and the city, for the Jumbotron that year. So that didn't happen. None of the details are right, because this never happened. If we can keep going. And then she says, I'm knocking on the doors and the windows of limousines and VIPs. Of course, that doesn't work either. If you look at the video, photographs, that whole area was blocked off. We've spoken to numerous people there that were in security. No one could have gotten anywhere near those cars, because this never happened. She gets that fact wrong. And the whole story about, of all people, she knocks on Puff's window. 13-year-old girl in Midtown by herself. Just think about that. Think about how illogical that is. Keep going. Again, this is Eminem performing in the streets. No Jumbotron. All the cars barricaded. Her facts don't check out because this never happened.
It's a little blurry, y'all.
So what ends up happening then, and this is important, is her original account in the original complaint says that at 9:30.
I was going to see if we can get it to not be so blurry.
30 or 10, she's told to wait there to get a ride to the after party. Okay, that also doesn't work, because there's photographs now of Mr. Combs, Mr. Carter at commercial establishments in New York after the VMAs. So this narrative of at 10 o'clock she ends up at this party can't work. They got caught. So they change it in the amended complaint that there's this.
And that's what I wanted to talk about, because in the initial complaint, they were very specific about date times. This happened at 10 o'clock. This happened, I think it was like 10 o'clock or 10:30. What they're talking about is that the show didn't end until 11 something. So her story about the driver saying, I got to take Mr. Combs to the party first, and then I'm going to come back and pick you up. That didn't make any sense, because they were still in the VMAs until after 11 o'clock. So her time period doesn't make sense. So then they amended the complaint, and they did take out the different time frames and things like that, exacting. But again, this goes to show, and this is how I'm saying that the lawyer failed, because the lawyer should have done this due diligence. This should have been done by his law firm. He should have gotten all of this information together, and it should have been so tight. It should have been so tight that there couldn't be any wiggle room. It should have been tight, and there couldn't have been any wiggle room. And that does such a disservice to victims, and it does a disservice to the person that they accuse, because you've got this information getting out in the media, and in the public that, first of all, a person did something, and then you have your client that you don't do enough vetting with this particular person so that you can provide some other types of service. So if she does have a situation, you can put her through some services, a counselor, you can put her through a psychological exam, or whatever these things need to be done, so that you don't get out here and look a fool. And this is for the attorneys. You out here looking crazy because what is that? Oh, that's just the thing. You're out here looking crazy because you have put your client in a situation to be ridiculed. Yes, I hear. You put your client in a situation to be ridiculed. They're going to put her name out there, and then you're going to put your client in a situation for her to be ridiculed when you could have vetted this information, found out that this information did not corroborate, and then you could have sent her on her merry way. But now you've put her in a situation, being her lawyer, and you didn't do it because you're so busy trying to get these names and get these 120 something lawsuits, Tony Busby, that now we're in this situation. Now, Jay-Z's attorneys have a right to come out here and try to quell the bleeding, so to speak. So let's continue. Let's get back to this. Let's continue.
Multiple drop off and pick up that lands them at this White House that doesn't exist. So as we continue, this is again her account of trying to change the story into this multiple drop off period to get them at the house to deal with the fact that there's photographic evidence that that's not where the after party was in the first place. And so as this account continues, you have to look at the timeline. You have to look at the timeline. So there's an old expression that time doesn't lie. Everything else that I'm talking about, these glaring inconsistencies, these are not minor inconsistencies. These are not minor problems with this story. This is utter falsehoods. Time never lies. And so if you look at the time, no matter what, this couldn't have happened. It's not even possible that this happened. And this is so important. So again, now that we know that it's a 5-hour drive in each direction, how she gets to the VMAs, okay, we're going to talk in some detail about this White House and whether or not they could have gotten there. And then again, Doe returns home to Rochester, okay? And this is very important. Because she returns home, she has to leave the New York area by 1:30 in the morning at the latest, okay? If you look at any of these White Houses and you look at the closest gas stations that could be to any of these White Houses, you have to leave this White House party by 12:45 in order to get to the gas station at 1:30 to call your father to pick you up to get home to Rochester at 6:30. So remember, she only has till 12:45 for everything that she says to have happened. The VMAs end at after 11. So you're talking about a window of a little more than an hour that this could possibly have happened even by their own account. And she says during that little bit more than an hour, not only does she get to the house, not only is she inside mingling with celebrities, she has a drink. She's then sexually assaulted in front of an adult female multiple times. She gets out of that. She fights through it. She leaves the house naked. She gets all the way to the gas station. She had 37 minutes to possibly do this. Okay, even under their account. Okay, and of course, the biggest problem, perhaps of all, is there's photographs putting Mr. Combs and Mr. Carter at different places, not in a White House during that 37 minutes. So when I tell you that it's not just that this story is a lie and that it's not true, it's provably, demonstrably false. This never happened. So we talked about this 37 minutes. The earliest, even if we didn't have that establishments. Remember, this is innocence on top of innocence. Even if we didn't have that, according to her, the earliest they could have gotten to the house is 12:11. And the reason for that is if the VMAs end and the drive is 20 minutes, the driver has to go there, drop them off, come back. pick her up, bring her back. She can't get there. And again, this is lickety split. This is as fast as is possible. Okay. This is no traffic leaving Radio City in Midtown during an award ceremony. 12:11. She has to leave that white residence by 12:48 in order for her father to pick her up at the gas station. 37 minutes. That's the entire window of opportunity here. So here again is the timeline. Shows the 11:11 VMA's end, the drop off, the pickup, and the drop off.
Let's look at this. This is interesting. Let's look at this. So the VMA ends, so the broadcasting ends at 11:11 p.m. After 11:30 on September 7th, 2000, at the absolute earliest, the limo driver drops Combs and the others off at the white residence. Now, this is what we're reading. Is it says up at the top.
Next slide.
Let's get back to that slide. Before we move on to the. All right, let's get here. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. But this is the Jane Doe timeline of events. Details shows the impossibility of her allegation. As discussed in the following slide for Joe's allegations to be possible, all the bad conduct Doe alleges have had to occur taking place at the very most 37 minutes. And this is what they're talking about, their 37-minute timeline from 12:11 to 12:43. And they're only going by what her timeline is. They're not going by what the actual the reality timeline. They're going by, this is Jane Doe's China. Because if you're a Marvel fan and you're talking about the multiverse, this is her timeline that we're talking about, that she's going to be discussing. So let's continue.
12:11. She has to leave that white residence by 12:48 in order for her father to pick her up at the gas station. 37.
And here's an interesting thing for her father to have to pick her up from the gas station. Once she calls, it's going to take him 5 hours to get to Manhattan. But I'm going to let him continue, because in my head, if she calls him at 12:30, 1:30, it's going to take him 5 hours to get there. So that means he's not going to get there to about 5 o'clock in the morning. And then he's got to contend, because again, the VMAs happened on a Thursday. So he's going to have to contend with traffic of people coming into the city to go to work. But let's continue.
7 minutes. That's the entire window of opportunity here. So here again is the timeline. Shows the 11:11 VMA's end, the drop off, the pickup, and the drop off. Next slide. And again, here we are. You see the 37 minutes. This is the 42 minutes it takes to walk. This is the closest gas station. And this is, remember this is a 13-year-old girl walking who has issues, who is maybe drugged, according to her, who's just been viciously raped multiple times, who was holding her own clothing, trying to get to a gas station that she had never been before. Okay? No map, no cell phone, no nothing. Straight line, it's 42 minutes. Okay? The story doesn't work. It doesn't check out. Okay? This never happened. Next slide. These are all the things that they claim happened in that 37 minutes. Okay? And again, 37 is giving them every benefit of the doubt as how long this window could be. Every benefit of the doubt. But here's an even bigger problem. There are photographs of Mr. Carter and Mr. Combs at commercial establishments during the 37 minutes. They're not there. Even if you try to come up with the fastest possible timeline, I'm talking about no traffic, nobody getting in your way at the door, right to the bar kind of timeline, it still doesn't work, because they had to leave Radio City. They had to go to the commercial establishments. Mr. Combs is photographed at 2 different commercial establishments with Jennifer Lopez, 2 establishments. They had to go to both of those establishments and get back to the White House. Get back to the White House before she has to leave at 12:30. None of this can work And in fact, and I think this is very important, you will notice in the photographs that Miss Lopez changes clothing between the two events that they go to in New York City. You can see in one photograph, she's wearing one outfit and another. So she had to be able to, in this 40-minute window, get to multiple events. They're seen drinking, socializing. She has to change outfits, change her hair, all within 40 minutes to get to that White House in time. And you're saying to yourself, so that's not possible. You're right, it's not possible. It's because this never happened. And then we get to the end.
Jay-Z, I don't know how much they paid him. Now, if you're not familiar with him, I'm familiar with this lawyer because this is the lawyer. He was Alec Baldwin's lawyer. You remember back in the summertime when Alec Baldwin was on trial for the death of his cinematographer on the during the Rust, I think it was Rust, during the Rust filming. This happened a couple of years ago because I know it was around. It happened a few years back. The killing of the cinematographer. Now, the armorer who was working on that case was convicted because of negligence and what was his involuntary murder. And he was Alec Baldwin's lawyer. And he got Alec Baldwin off because of the fact that he uncovered, because he was when I first saw him, and this is a different look for him. When I first saw him he was fumbling and bumbling and everything that first day, but then that second day he was this person that we see now, because he discovered that that there was a different case for some bullets or something like that belonged for the Rust case, but these bullets were someplace else. It was a whole lot of stuff. I did a video on it that I detailed about what happened, but he is that particular lawyer. And I think he is, I'm not sure if he's Megan Thee Stallion's lawyer, but anyway, Megan Thee Stallion's using this law firm for her case against Milagro Cooper, and for them filing the restraining order against Tory Lanez. So I'm going to let him continue.
She kept running until she reached a gas station. A female clerk noticed her, allowed her to use the phone. Plaintiff called her father, admitted that she had lied about her whereabouts. And this is a very small thing, very small. But remember, when you leave house and you're 13, you have to have a story. You either have to sneak out and not have a lie, or you tell your parents a lie. Sort of two options, right? Earlier, she says, well, I didn't tell my parents a lie. I just snuck out the window, right? Here, she says, well, I lied. See, do you know what that means? That means she's lying within her own story. They can't both be true. And, I said earlier that no witnesses have come forward in basically a quarter of a century, except for one. Now there's one, her own father. The person who knows her best. And he came forward too. And he said, you know what? This never happened. This never happened. And his attention was drawn to it. I feel like I would remember that. And they said, but you've got a lot going on. Maybe you forgot this. You've got a lot going on. They told him, listen, you've got a lot going on. Try to see if they pressed him, if he stuck to his story. He said, yeah, I have a lot going on, but that's something that would definitely stick in my mind. Of course it would stick in your mind. You drove 10 hours to pick up your 13-year-old daughter in New York City. It's not something you would forget. It's not something that he did forget because this never happened. And of course, just like the friend that couldn't be there at the beginning, you can't have a witness to something that never happened. When asked, well, what did you say to your father in the car? What did you talk about? Nothing. She says not a word was spoken. There can't be a conversation because this never happened. And so you got to ask yourself what's going on here, right? And you all saw that videotape of her being interviewed in the shadowy room.
So he has meticulously, through his due diligence of investigating his firm, investigating this case, he has pretty much debunked her timeline. that all the things could not have happened, and that her only witness, which was her father, does not remember having to done all of this, because it would stick out in your mind if you're having to, because as a parent, if your child, you know what I think about with this story, and it's not a proper comparison, but I do remember it sticks out. Do any of y'all remember watching the Cosby Show with Vanessa when she went to Baltimore to have big fun with the wretched? And you remember how they had to drive she rode the bus those many hours to do that. And you remember how upset her parents were because of that. And Claire and Heathcliff Huxtable were all upset about what was going on with her. That would be something that would stick in your mind, simply because your child, and whether this child is 13, whether this child is 16, you're going to remember that your child was 5.5 hours away from home, and you had to pick her up 5.5 hours away. And even if you did not speak of what happened to her while she was there, I am quite sure that there would have been some punishment levied, or at least a stern talking to, about you being in a different city that is that far away. I imagine that. Y'all let me know down in the comments. Is this something that would be? Again, no one here is trying to not believe victims, no one any things, but you do have to vet their story. You do. You do have to vet their story. And so let's continue what's going on here. Let's continue.
Holding a teddy bear. She's talking about her issues, her head trauma. She's been through a lot in her life, you can tell. And so who took advantage of this? Why are we here?
It sounds like he is about to lay down. He is about to really push back on Mr. Tony Busby. And that to me is where you need to focus. I know that they had filed a motion to have her Jane Doe status taken away. I don't think that they even have to worry about that. I think that if they can keep her as a Jane Doe, but I do think that if they're going to go after anyone, they're going to go after the Tony Busby law firm.
Why is this story getting created? And I'll tell you who took advantage of this. This lawyer took advantage of this. That's what's going on here. And you can see here, now that this is starting to unravel and the truth is coming out, he's starting to walk away from it. He's saying, oh, sorry, this.
In my vernacular, he is backpedaling and pussy popping, but let's continue.
Case was referred to our firm by another firm, so I didn't really check it out, is basically what he's saying, right? He brings an accusation like this, attacks a man with the integrity of Mr. Carter, and all he has to say for himself now is, well, I didn't really check on this. I got a referral, trying to make a little bit of money, so we just went live with it. Next. Here is again the timeline that he went live with.
Oh, I love a good PowerPoint.
In the face of this irrefutable, time doesn't lie evidence, he went live with it. And again, it doesn't work. This 37 minutes, it does not work. It does not work because there's photographs. There's photographs. You can find them on the internet of them. They're changing clothes. She's changed clothes. Do you know how long that takes for her to go to 2 events, change clothes, get inside, have drinks? They're socializing. They're not popping into these events. To then get back out into the suburbs somewhere at a house that doesn't exist? It's not possible. Actually not possible. He is for sure innocent of this accusation. Next slide. But you know, this lawyer, he doesn't care about things like this. The only other person he's brought a complaint against for just mere association, merely being at a Sean Combs party, he's already been wrong about that one too. he had to change that one. If you look at the next slide, he got the year wrong. He said there was a party in the Hamptons. Mr. Combs was in Saint-Tropez at the time. Didn't check out. 2 claims, neither are checking out. We could keep going.
You remember I've said this in previous videos. This is the VMA case, and that is the house in the Hampton car incident. And you remember in the Hampton car incident, the dates didn't match up because the date that was in the lawsuit, Puffy was out of town. And the only time that they had the party at that was the next year. That didn't match up. And then some other things didn't match up. So these are the 2 cases that I had talked to you all about, that the time frames and things like that didn't match up. Now, again, that's a Tony Busby problem. Because as the attorney, you are supposed to do your due diligence.
And we have this, individuals calling my office, telling me story after story. And, I'm not going to get sidetracked. People think I'm going to start saying, explaining he's a grifter and all these things about him. I'm not here to talk about him more than I need to. But there's people calling the office saying, yeah, they were being pressured to say stuff, to say that they were with Mr. Combs. These are affidavits. They're filed in court. This is what you're dealing with here. Next slide. And so this is who took advantage of the woman in the shadowy video.
He did file. If you go back to my video about Jay-Z, they do put in that affidavit. And again, I'm wanting to think it was that Henderson woman that's out in LA filing charges. But we'll look back who the lady is. But an attorney talked with a woman who said that she had a case of trafficking that she wanted the Busby law firm to help her with. And she felt like they were pressuring her to try to put Diddy in it, or to put Jay-Z in it, or something like that. And she's like, no, it's a totally different thing. I've got total other information. And this may be a case that could bring down a ring, but he did not take that case because it had nothing to do with Diddy. And they filed an affidavit for that along when they were filing to get this case dismissed or removed. So let's continue.
He gives a press conference, 1-800 number, and he claims 2 days after posting that press conference, 2 days, that he has 120 fully vetted plaintiffs, 120. Anybody that does this for real, anyone that knows what they're doing, knows to corroborate, to interrogate, and to be sure about even one person takes weeks. One person. You've got to find out if their story makes sense. Did they really get dropped off? Does any of it check out? Is there corroboration? Are there any witnesses? It takes weeks for one. He had 120 in 2 days. When he files these cases, he doesn't even enter his notice of appearance. He just has some other lawyer file them. He holds these press conferences. He says, listen, anybody out there, just call the 1-800 number. If you can put yourself anywhere near a Sean Combs party at any point, we can go after the other celebrities there. We can make money together. Just call the 1-800 number. That's all you need to do. And then we'll send a letter to the celebrity. They're not going to want to have this in the public light, and they're going to be shaken down, and they'll send us money. So he just call the number. And Mr. Carter said no. He said, that's not going to happen anymore. I'm going to put my foot down. And that's what he did. And I would urge any other celebrity that's being shaken down right now to do the same thing and to stand the truth.
Not a shakedown.
None of this ever happened. And what this 1-800 lawyer is doing, he's taking the justice away from this. He's destroying this opportunity and the voices of real victims. And it's got to end. So, are there any questions? Yes.
One question.
Sure.
So for the people that are calling your office, I'm assuming if it's not dismissed, like worst case scenario.
So that looks like the end of his presentation. It may go on. There's like 10 more minutes in here. Let me see if he's going to, let's really go forward. So he's just answering questions, and we're not going to go over that. I just wanted to see this PowerPoint presentation about this case, about this from this lawyer to hear the information that he had given the news, given the news about what's going on, what his office did in the past couple of weeks. And in the past couple of weeks, according to this presentation, they have debunked or they have found that it is implausible for that story to have happened the way it was told, because of the fact that places that were mentioned didn't exist. Witnesses that were said to have been there, they were either on tour or they didn't attend the VMAs at that point. The time frame in which the complainant said that that she was taken to this party, the time frames is not the same. She said 10:30, and then when they amended it, they took out of the time. So they went through it, and even if they took what her timeline said, it didn't match up with what they were actually doing. And I did like the fact that he was like, and Jennifer Lopez had to change clothes before she went to another place. How long does it take to change clothes? It probably doesn't take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to change clothes, redo your makeup, freshen up a little bit, because they weren't doing anything but sitting at the VMAs. So it didn't take much for her to change her clothes, probably because she had her hair different, fluff out her hair and stuff like that, and then they go. But still, they had to go someplace to do that, unless she did it at the VMAs. Even if she did it at the VMAs, they still were somewhere for 10 or 15 minutes to be able to do that. And they did debunk like that they were at a certain party, and that during the time period that she said it happened, they were still at the party, and they were at the party for whatever time. I don't know if they had any cameras or anything like that to show them, or I don't even know if that footage still exists, unless somebody placed it on the internet. But a couple of things that stood out to me was the fact that the place that they said that she went to, this White House, didn't exist. The other thing that stood out to me was the timeline. Someone is driving you 5.5 hours to get to New York City. And so that means that two people had to have driven a total of 20 hours, because it's 5 hours to get there and 5 hours to get back. So in that day, you went a total of 20 hours. No, she didn't. Somebody, it was just a back and forth to get her. So there was 10 hours of literally driving and riding. So what else was there? The biggest thing, and the thing that I did appreciate him talking about, because I don't want it to be where that victim is she can be anonymous and scurry back to go back to where it is she came from. I don't think that Jay-Z is going to sue her for anything like that. I don't think he is going to do anything like that, but I do think that he is going to put his resources, that's the better word, to put his resources into this Tony Busby law firm. Because again, the attorney at that law firm should have done a little bit more due diligence, because even, you remember, I told you that on X, there was a Beyonce Stan account. And I'm going to pull this up now. If you go back to my video, hold on, y'all. Bookmarks. Here we go. So I'm just looking for, here we are. Let me just share this tab. So if you see this Stan account right here, this account went and debunked a whole lot of different stuff. And this was back on December 10th that they debunked. They had talked about people. There are people who were there that was talking about the timelines and stuff. And if you see this information, this is what they were talking about. It said that Diddy didn't host a party that night. They were at a Manhattan club called Lotus that night. Diddy was in a private section. Jay-Z was never in his section, nor were they hanging out. Diddy later was spotted entering his New York townhome with Jennifer Lopez at 3 a.m. alone. We ran the photos. So hold on, let's see who this person is. So this person right here is saying that he did it. He says here he didn't. I was working for a prominent paper and I did the write-up for that night. He never went to an after party, and didn't host a party that night. They were at a Manhattan club called Lotus that night. Diddy was in a private section. Jay-Z was never in his section, nor were they hanging out. Diddy later was spotted entering his New York townhome with Jennifer Lopez at 3 a.m. alone. We ran the photos. In fact, you can even Google them. There is zero truth to this story, and it's easily proven, thankfully, which is why he's calling out the accuser. Also, Lotus nightclub had off-duty police officers as bouncers, and they never let in a 13-year-old girl, not would they. She claimed it was a party at his house, but he didn't have a mansion back in 2000. Diddy lived in an exclusive townhouse on Park Ave in NYC that he bought in 1998. Everything about her story so far doesn't line up. She said a party at Diddy's mansion. He had a townhouse. She said after party at house, the after party was at a club, and that everyone went their separate ways. And Diddy was photographed entering his townhouse with J-Lo after leaving Lotus nightclub. So y'all, this was people on X debunking this on December 12th. And I remember Blue came on my live, and we were talking about it. And even after the live, we were kind of going through the information about how all of this happened, and things weren't making sense. We didn't have the information at the time that the girl came from Rochester. We was talking about her being from Manhattan, New York, or the Bronx, the Queens, or whatever. We were talking about that particular stuff and how she got back home and stuff. So we're seeing right now, again, my ire is not on the victim. I am the person who brought this up. I'm not even discussing her at this point, because clearly her story is not making any sense. But it is the job of the attorney to vet that story, to go over that story, to find things that happen. I mean, simple things like calling MTV and asking if there was a Jumbotron. Did y'all have a Jumbotron? They didn't get a permit. You see how easy that was? That he found out they couldn't get a permit. So no, there was no Jumbotron. Looking at every home that Diddy owned at that time and around that time, there wasn't a gas station. What he said, 2 miles away, 4 miles away. That there was no after party at a house. Diddy's after party, he didn't host an after party, and the after parties that he went to were at commercial areas. Excuse me. This was an interesting thing, but I understand that it was done because of the fact that Tony Busby, and we covered that. Tony Busby came out and talked about the 120 cases that he had, and him trying to gather more people so they can file more cases, and then not doing their due diligence. What do y'all think about this story? What do y'all think about that press conference? What do y'all think about it? A mess. We should see whether or not the court is going to take this case up. I don't know if they fast tracked it or anything like that, but we're going to see what they have. And it's probably more on the part that they are not going to go through this case. They're going to dismiss that case for Jay-Z and Diddy. All right, people, we do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video if you care. Y'all, please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell a coworker, tell that heifer that you cannot stand that I'm over here making these videos. And as always, people, bye-bye.